In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, there is no white. So what do we do when we have armies like the Order of the Sacred Rose, who sport white armour? No matter how hard you try, the results are never satisfying, because the paint is thick, chalky, and lacks definition. The fact of the matter is you can't paint true white. So how do we fix this? Stick with me and I'll show you my 7-step process to painting a white miniature that is ready to wreak havoc across the tabletop and draw your eye in amongst the sea of greens, greys and browns. This is Cursed Crusader Arts. When we look at anything that appears to be true white, it is often influenced by the colour of the things around it. This is like lightning taking on the hue of the sky around it, gradually getting brighter and brighter until we see the distinctive white line cutting through the sky. We can emulate this effect by using our base coats to influence the colours on our miniatures. I first start by base coating my entire miniature with Mournfang Brown. I don't want such a dark and harsh colour that we might get with black, so a rich brown will suit us quite nicely, and make our Sister of Battle look like a chocolatey snack.
Nice.
Next we will work up by adding a layer of Zandri dust all over our armour plates. The Mournfang Brown from before will be covered entirely, but the richness will show through the translucent paint that is over the top. These two paints will add a slightly warmer tone to the deepest parts of the miniature, suggesting the build-up of dirt that has been kicked up during the battle. White light is created by combining all of the other coloured light waves, and this is shown well with a prism. However, there can often be a misunderstanding when we try to translate this information over to paint. If we were to combine all our colours together, we will instead make a kind of muddy purplish brown, which is close to but not quite black, so we must rely on our white paints that we buy from the stores, instead of trying to make our own. Screaming Skull followed by Wraithbone will bring our armour up to a cream-like colour, which is something like ivory or milk amber. If you wanted to take that route for something more like a reliquary, you could forego the upcoming pure whites for yellow washes instead. Now before we move on to our brightest white colours, we should take the time to paint the other sections of the miniature, especially those parts which are directly next to our armour. This will allow us to repair any blemishes that we may accidentally make, ensuring that our white armour remains as pure and clean as possible when we reach the end of our project. With the rest of the miniature completed, or at least close to completion, we can now make our armour completely white. I use it directly from the pot, but you could add a little water or Larmian medium if you feel it's better for you. However, it is almost inevitable that you will have some kind of chalky appearance. This is because white paint uses pigments from sources that are much more difficult to break down than what we have in our other paints. I then use White Scar, which is the brightest of the white paints which I currently have. This I do water down, and I use it sparingly on the top surfaces of the miniature where I imagine light striking. This will help to create a gradient, as the Corax white that we just used has a bluish grey tone in it that we will reinforce shortly. When I apply the White Scar, I try to use a kind of precise stippling motion whilst also following the direction of the armour plate, trying to follow the way that the light would flow. Our miniature is looking good, but it's still a little flat, so I'm going to utilise the texture produced by the chalky paints to provide shadows. I make two mixes of Nuln Oil and Guilliman Blue. Before applying it, we need to thin it down so it's not too intense. In one, I use Contrast Medium. This will ensure that we keep our pigment consistency without thinning it too much. This will be applied to the lower and darker section of our whites. We can add Larmian Medium to the second mix, which will thin it out so that it's more akin to a wash instead. This is for the upper parts of the armour and shows that it's still affected by the shadows, but to a lesser degree. Finally, we can stipple or dry brush White Scar over the top again. Be careful not to destroy the shadows that you just made with your homebrewed wash and glaze though. The White Scar is quite intense and will make your miniature look as though it switched from dark mode to light mode and melt your retinas. leaving you unable to admire the wonderful miniature you just painted. Keep the paint as close to the highest and brightest parts of the armour, and it will allow the eye of the viewer to comfortably travel around the miniature. The white armour is now complete and looks great. With the other colours of the miniature right next to it, it will trick our brains into perceiving the armour as actual white, instead of a series of browns, blues and greys that gradually get brighter over a period of time. White is notorious to paint, and just about every faction has a group that uses it, so take your time to build up your layers. But why go through all this effort as opposed to painting it white and using a pin wash? Well, this style is more for the visual texture and the faint warm tone underneath all the colder whites. The battles of the 41st millennium are merciless and apocalyptical, so I imagine even the smoothest of surfaces pick up dirt, dust, and any other fragmented things around it, so I feel it's more fitting of a grimdark universe. But what do you think? Will you try this method out, or do you have your own style? Leave a comment down below and let me know your recipes for painting a pure white. And if you learned something from this, subscribe for more and turn on the notifications. However you choose to paint white, keep making things, have fun, and I'll see you next time on Cursed Crusader Arts.